Hello.
I told my husband he's going to have to wait for that heart transplant. The author's mentioned in the description, and I appreciate your patience. There's a lot to unpack here. My husband's 55, and I'm 48. We've been married for 18 years and have 2 kids. Our daughter's 15, and our son's 12. He was born with a congenital heart defect and has been seeing a cardiologist regularly since he was about 23. Then last year, he suffered a heart attack. It happened out of nowhere. He collapsed right in front of me and the kids at the park. His heart actually stopped, and I had to perform CPR while our children stood there watching in complete panic. Miraculously, he started breathing again before the ambulance arrived. He ended up in a coma for 3 days. The only reason he's still alive is because of this incredible piece of tech called an LVD, a left ventricular assist device. It's a machine that basically keeps his heart pumping. It's surgically attached to his heart and runs on batteries. There's a cord that comes out of his chest and hooks up to a controller, which is connected to battery packs he has to carry around in a bag. Those batteries need swapping every 15 to 18 hours. At night, the setup changes slightly. He plugs the controller into a long cable that runs to the wall outlet. Personally, I think this is nothing short of a modern miracle. He, on the other hand, finds it frustrating. The bag is heavy and awkward, and he had to give up swimming because the cord can't get wet. Originally, the doctors were planning on a full transplant, but after running some tests, they said his body wasn't in good enough shape to handle it. The recovery for a transplant averages around 3 months, compared to just 3 weeks with the LVD surgery. That kind of recovery requires a round-the-clock caretaker, and he'd have to move closer to the hospital because of all the weekly follow-ups. Now, the LVD isn't a permanent solution, it's more like a bridge. He will eventually need a new heart. But we were told he could live for years with the device. And we went through loads of detailed info last year about what both options entail. That brings us to the current mess. Just 3 days ago, I got a call from the hospital asking to set up a meeting with a social worker. The purpose? To prepare me for my role as the caretaker for a transplant patient. I was completely thrown off. Based on everything I'd read and been told, this meeting usually comes right before someone gets put on the transplant list. So I asked a few questions. Turns out, my husband had already gone through all the required tests behind my back. The social worker told me that if my interview went well, he could be listed for a transplant within days. And due to his blood type, he'd likely get a heart within 2 months. I was furious. He had started this entire process without even mentioning it to me. I asked if delaying it would put his health at risk. She said that as long as he takes care of himself, he'll be fine. On average, people live with an LVD for about 7 years before they even need the transplant. I thanked her and said I'd call back. The hospital where the surgery would take place is 5 hours away from where we live. Like I said, recovery from a transplant takes about 3 months. He'd need someone with him 24/7 during that time and would have to stay within an hour of the hospital in case of emergencies. That night, after dinner, I finally brought it up. I asked why he hadn't told me he was planning on going ahead with the transplant so soon. His response left me speechless. Do I really need your permission? I'm the one having surgery. Shouldn't I get to decide when? I stared at him and calmly asked, okay, then who's supposed to be your caretaker? He gave me this incredulous look and said, are you seriously saying you won't do it? You're my wife. I followed up with another simple question, and who's going to look after our kids for those 3 months? He suggested we just bring them along. That's when I laid out a few things he clearly hadn't thought through. I'd need to take a leave of absence from work, which is already tricky since this is our busiest season. We don't have any family nearby, they're all out of state, so we have no backup. Our kids are in school. I can't care for him properly while also trying to parent full-time. We'd have to pay rent on a temporary apartment near the hospital on top of our regular mortgage. And perhaps the biggest issue? Our 15-year-old is in therapy for severe depression and suicidal thoughts, something that started after the heart attack. Skipping therapy for 3 months could really set him back. I told my husband that something this major needs real planning. If he could wait until summer, my sister, who's a school teacher, could come and stay with our kids. That'd give us time to save up, and I could give proper notice at work. I reminded him that the LVD is functioning just fine and there's no immediate danger. But he was already upset. He started snapping at me, saying I just didn't get how annoying it is to deal with the batteries and equipment. I tried to stay calm. I told him, "You're right, I don't know what it's like in your shoes, and I understand you need to take care of yourself. But I have to take care of all 4 of us, and I'm asking you to stick it out for 9 more months so I can put together a plan that works for everyone." That just pushed him over the edge. He started yelling, accusing me of being selfish and only thinking about what's convenient for me. He shouted, "Why are you trying to stop me from getting the surgery that could save my life? Do you want me to die?" In that moment, something in me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just looked him straight in the eye and said, "You're the one being selfish. I can live with you putting your own needs ahead of mine, but not ahead of our children's. You're not dying, so stop being so dramatic." I told him, "You expect me to drop everything just because I'm your wife, but you didn't even think it was important to include me in this decision. The moment you decided to move forward without telling me, you stopped treating me like a partner." He stood there, face red, fists clenched, trembling with anger, refusing to meet my eyes. So I said this: "You've got 2 options. Either you wait 9 months so I can create a real plan, or you find someone else to care for you and get the transplant whenever you want. And when it's over, you can either treat me with the respect I deserve, or we get a divorce." As I walked away, I added, "If I truly wanted you dead, I wouldn't have saved your life at the park." I headed upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard the front door open and then close. He didn't come home that night. He's been ignoring my calls and texts ever since. Yesterday, I finally messaged him and told him he needed to let me know he was safe or I'd report him missing. He replied with a short "I'm alive," but that's it. He hasn't come back. From the looks of it, he came by while I was at work. Some of his LVD supplies are missing, along with a few clothes and toiletries. I don't even recognize him anymore. And what really breaks my heart is that he hasn't called the kids. Not once. They're devastated. And honestly, I think my marriage might be over. I keep wondering if I was too harsh. But deep down, I really don't think I was. So, am I the one in the wrong here? I posted all this last night around midnight, hoping for some clarity, just trying to get my head straight. Well, I definitely got a response. It's 11 a.m. now, and somehow everything in my life has shifted. Whether folks were kind or tearing into me, every single comment helped me in one way or another. So thank you. I've never been called selfish before. That was new. I haven't slept at all. I feel completely drained, mentally, emotionally, physically, just wiped out. Then, around 7 a.m., a message popped up on Reddit. It was from someone claiming to be Rachel, Brian's wife. Not their real names, obviously. Brian is my husband's coworker. He's the guy my husband always plays golf with. Rachel said she saw my post, figured out who I was, and asked if we could meet for breakfast. I let her know my kids were on winter break and we had plans, but she kept insisting, said she really needed to talk. The kids were still asleep, so she offered to come to my house instead. I was hesitant. Rachel and I have never hung out, even though our husbands are close, but she wouldn't let it go. Eventually, I gave in and sent her my address. When she arrived, she looked incredibly nervous. Her whole demeanor was jittery, like she was about to drop a bomb. She told me she'd read my Reddit post and instantly knew it was about me. I invited her in, but she didn't want to risk waking the kids, so we stepped out into the backyard. Even though it was chilly, around 60 degrees, I lit a few candles and turned on the outdoor fireplace my husband had built a few years back. Then, without much build-up, she dropped the truth. My husband is cheating on me. He met someone at the gym. Rachel and Brian go to the same gym, and apparently, after the heart attack, Brian convinced my husband to join too. That lines up. If you've read my full story, you'll know that was around the same time he began distancing himself from the family. My husband had lost a lot of weight during his hospital stay, and he stopped wearing his wedding ring because it got too loose. Said he didn't want to lose it. Well, turns out that made it even easier to fool someone new. Rachel said this woman, let's call her Alyssa, had no clue he was married. He'd spun a tale about surviving a heart attack and living with the LVED, which she found impressive and tragic. Of course, he conveniently left out that his wife had kept him alive with CPR that day in the park. At this point, I was so emotionally fried, I could barely react. So I asked Rachel, what's in this for you? Why are you telling me? Did my husband feed her some story about me being the villain after our argument? She told me she could call Alyssa over, and that Alyssa had proof. I agreed. 5 minutes later, a young blonde woman, mid-20s maybe, pulled up outside. Her hair was up in a ponytail, and her face was streaked with tears. She looked devastated. As soon as she saw me, she started crying harder and said, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Then she showed me her phone. There were photo after photo of her and my husband. Cuddled up. Lying in bed. Messy hair. Clearly topless. Some of them looked like they'd just, well, you know. Then came the texts and I felt physically ill. Let me pause here for context. When we were being educated about post-surgery realities, both with the LVD and transplant, one of the topics they covered was sex. We were told it's common for someone's libido to drop after surgery, and that while it often returns, it varies from person to person. Even with that knowledge, I was patient. My husband and I had always shared an active, fulfilling sex life, even after 20 years together. We'd been intimate multiple times a week, sometimes daily. But about a month after he got home, I tried to initiate things. He apologized and said he wasn't ready. I didn't push. I tried again later, and again he shut down. So I backed off. I told him I'd wait until he felt ready again. That was 15 months ago. And now I find out he's been sleeping with his 28-year-old personal trainer. How painfully cliché. Each text, each photo felt like a blade twisting in my gut. But what truly shattered me, what tore through my heart, was a specific message from a couple of months ago. It was around the time he told her he was ready to go through with the transplant. He didn't tell me. He told her. Some people in the comments had suggested that maybe he was terrified of relying on a machine to survive, or that PTSD from his heart attack had made him desperate for control. But no, his message to her read, "I'm sick and tired of this fucking bag weighing me down. It makes me look old and sick." She replied, "No, it doesn't. I don't care about a stupid bag, you're super hot." Yes, her grammar was exactly that bad. He responded, "It gets in the way when I fuck you." And that's when I lost it. I didn't cry because of the message. I cried because of the date. He sent her that text the exact same day my son attempted suicide again. While I was sitting in an ICU, staring at my child hooked up to IVs, his wrists bandaged and pale, whispering desperate prayers for his life, my husband was back at home. He was supposed to be taking care of our daughter. He was supposed to be cleaning up the blood. But no, he was sexting his mistress. Probably in our bed. Or on the couch where he and I had kissed just the week before. The next day, when our son finally opened his eyes, the first thing he did was ask for his dad. I called my husband right away. He sounded rushed and said he was heading into an early meeting that he'd visit after work. You know what he was actually doing? She sent him a picture that morning. Her top was pulled down to show a massive hickey on her chest. Her caption? "I like it when the bag slaps my leg. So kinky." His reply? "I wish I was there right now. I might call in sick tomorrow just to see you." Peach and eggplant emojis followed. That's when I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I asked Alyssa if she knew anything else about the transplant plans. She said he'd told her he didn't want his mother taking care of him, he couldn't stand her. So he planned for his sister to help. According to him, she didn't have a husband or kids or much of a life, so she could dedicate her time to him. When Alyssa offered to step in and be there for him, he said he didn't want her to see him at his lowest. But guess what? Just 3 days ago, he showed up at her place with an overnight bag and started planting the idea that maybe she should be his caretaker. I turned to Rachel and asked how long she'd known. Apparently, it all started to unravel when she saw my Reddit post and casually mentioned it to Brian. That's when Brian made a comment about how the situation sounded familiar, too familiar. He confessed the whole thing to her. Rachel started crying. Turns out, while my husband was playing golf with Brian, Brian was supposedly fishing with my husband. Once she read that my husband couldn't even go fishing due to his condition, she realized Brian was lying too. Rachel had known Alyssa for a while, so after piecing everything together, she reached out to tell her the truth. So yeah, I asked Alyssa what she planned to do next. Right in front of me, she picked up her phone and texted my husband, "You're a lying, cheating piece of shit. Don't ever contact me again." Almost instantly, her phone started blowing up. He was calling her repeatedly. She blocked him on the spot. Then she looked me in the eye and said she'd go with me when I met with a divorce lawyer. She promised to hand over all the texts and photos, and even said she'd give a statement if it came to that. She apologized over, and eventually, she and Rachel left. Rachel offered the same, she'd testify if needed. After the kids finished breakfast, my phone rang. Honestly, I wanted to toss it straight into the garbage disposal. But I picked up anyway. It was my husband. He was sobbing, rambling, trying to apologize, saying I was right about everything. Said he could wait the 7 months for the transplant, that he wanted to come home, to be with his family again. I told him, fine, come by after work. That gave me about 9 hours to pack up every single piece of his crap and set it out by the front door. I'll include screenshots of those texts too. He'll have no choice now. He's going to need his parents' help whether he likes it or not. And I really hope, for the kid's sake, that he has the basic decency to try and repair what's left of his relationship with them. That's the only part of him I'm still even remotely invested in. I'm sorry this is turning into a saga. I'm beyond drained, but oddly, I feel at peace. Everything that used to confuse me now makes sense. Anyway, I took the kids to a movie. Second update. Right after I told cheating Jason, let's call him CJ for short, that he could swing by after work, I got to work myself. I started boxing up all his stuff. While I was clearing out his side of the closet, I found something disgusting. A shoebox tucked in the back, filled with nasty little treasures, a pink thing with what looked like dried semen, several photos of Alyssa, completely naked, sleeping. I honestly don't even know if she posed for them or if he snapped them without her knowing. And then there was a neat bundle of handwritten notes from her, spanning the last 8 months. Dated. Signed. Like love letters from a high school relationship, only filthier. Around 1 p.m., I got a text from CJ saying he was on his way and asking if the kids could go to the neighbors for a bit so we could talk. Lucky for him, they were already there. He walked in like nothing happened. Arms wide open. Like he expected me to fall into them. I immediately stepped back and moved around the kitchen island so he couldn't touch me. He looked surprised. Hurt, even. He told me he'd left work early because he felt awful about the way he yelled at me the other night. Said he couldn't live with how he treated me, that he loved me, loved our family, and was terrified of losing us. He admitted he should never have started the transplant process behind my back. Said he was just desperate to get rid of the LVD because the batteries were driving him crazy. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "We've talked about this for a year. You decided to keep the LVAD. You told me you didn't want the transplant. And instead of coming to me to talk things through, you made the call on your own. Why?" He had the nerve to say, "I thought you'd be okay with it. We've done stuff like this before." Excuse me? I said, "No, we haven't. We've never made huge decisions like this without talking them over." Or at least I haven't. And then I told him flat out, you know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. The last few days made something painfully clear. We want very different things out of life. I've felt a major shift between us for a long time now. And honestly, I don't think our marriage can be saved. I waited. He didn't say a word. So I pulled out a petition for divorce I'd found online and said, let's go through this. Maybe we can agree on terms without dragging each other through expensive lawyers. That was the switch. His whole face changed. He went from regretful to furious in 2 seconds flat. Started screaming at me, if you think you can get rid of me, you are out of your ing mind. I reminded him, didn't you just say you were sorry for yelling at me? He didn't care. Kept going, that and you. What about our vows? What about in sickness and in health? I stared at him and said, commas could be, what about forsaking all others? You were the one who broke those vows first. The look on his face would have been hilarious if I hadn't been genuinely scared. He called me a bitch and stormed out of the house. This man, who had never yelled at me before, never cursed at me, never called me names, was now completely unhinged. I sat down and tried to calm myself before the kids came home. About 30 minutes later, Rachel messaged me again. She said Alyssa really needed to talk and gave me both their numbers. I called Alyssa. She was crying. She told me CJ had shown up at her place, banging on the door, begging her to talk. Said he loved her, apologized for lying about being married, claimed his marriage had been dead for years and the only reason he stayed was for the kids. When she wouldn't open up, he started sobbing, said he wanted another chance. Promised he was filing for divorce on Monday so they could finally be together. Alyssa told me she couldn't trust a single word he said. She asked him how he could lie for months and still claim to love her. She told him to leave. He begged to call her sometime. She said no. I stayed on the phone with her as she left the apartment. She whispered, "What the F*********?" I asked what was happening, and she said he was sitting in his car outside her place, crying. I stayed on the line until she was in her car and driving away. Later that evening, I took the kids to dinner. We actually had a great time, just the three of us. When we got home, they grabbed their books and headed to their rooms to read. I poured myself a big glass of wine and sat down with my own. Then Alyssa texted again. CJ had followed her to the gym. At first, he was all, "Please, baby, give me another chance." When she ignored him, he flipped, accused her of flirting with another guy just to make him jealous. She told me she was actually scared. Said she's thinking about getting a restraining order. She's even considering unblocking his number just to collect more evidence of his harassment. Around 9:55 that night, he showed up again. The moment he stepped inside and saw all the moving boxes, he froze. He looked at me and asked, "Where do you think you're going?" I laughed. I said, "That's not my stuff. It's yours." Then I told him plain and simple, "Our marriage is over. You left days ago, took some of your things. Now come take the rest." He tried to act like he lived here. Said he was staying. I asked, "Where have you been sleeping the last few nights?" He said, "At Brian's." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Stop lying. We both know you've been with your girlfriend." He kept denying it, swearing he didn't know what I was talking about. Said he loved me and wanted to fix things. I said, "I thought you were only with me for the kids, and that you were filing for divorce Monday so you could marry Alyssa." He asked, "Who told you that?" I said, "Obviously Alyssa." His whole face drained of color. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He stammered, "Who's Alyssa?" I just sighed. "I'm done," I said. "I'm so tired of your lies. I want a divorce. I want us to sit down like adults, figure out who gets what, and work out a custody schedule. Without court, without drama." But more than anything, I told him I wanted him out of the house and out of my face for good. He snorted. The bastard actually snorted and said, Why should I make it easy for you? I didn't flinch. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of everything I found in his shoebox, the thong, the photos, the notes. Because if we go to court, I'm pretty sure this little collection would screw you over. His whole posture changed. The arrogance dropped. He looked like a balloon that just lost all its air. All he could say was, "What about my transplant?" I told him flat out, "That's no longer my business. Call your parents, they're good people and they've been dying to help you." And just when I thought he couldn't sink any lower, he offered me the house in exchange for taking care of him during recovery. Seriously, I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Get the F*** out of my house before I toss your boxes on the lawn and set them on fire." Finally, he left. And now here I am, sitting in my kitchen, feeling like I could vomit from how nauseous, angry, and heartbroken I am. I keep wondering, has he always been like this? Or did he just slowly turn into someone I don't even recognize? What really pisses me off is knowing I'm going to cry over this pathetic excuse of a man. Someone who doesn't deserve a single tear. Final update. The past few days have been a blur, chaotic, emotional, but also strangely clarifying. I've been calling my soon-to-be ex cheating Jason, but honestly, that's too long. So now I'm just calling him Jason. Fits perfectly. The day after Jason tried to bribe me with the house, if I agreed to be his nurse for 3 months, he texted me. It was December 23rd. He asked if we could talk. I told him yes on 2 conditions. 1, no yelling. And 2, he had to spend time with the kids. He agreed. I told the kids their dad was coming over and said I'd head out to grab some coffee while they visited. But when Jason got there, my son came up to me and quietly asked if he could come with me instead. I asked him why, and he just said, "Please. I'd rather not stay." Then my daughter piped up and said she wouldn't stay without her brother. That was all Jason needed to hear to lose his temper. He snapped at them and sent them to their rooms so he and I could talk. And just like that, he flipped again. Started out apologetic, then got mad, then broke down crying, then got mean. It was like watching someone cycle through 4 personalities in 5 minutes. I stayed calm and said, "I really think you need someone to talk to. A professional. Therapy." I pointed out how much trauma he's been through the past year, and how I've done everything I could, but he needs more help than I can give alone. He said he'd go to therapy if I agreed to be his caretaker. But only a marriage counselor, of course. I told him no. That ship has sailed. Our marriage is over, and no amount of therapy is going to change how I feel. The only thing I'm open to negotiating is the divorce itself. He got agitated again. Said he'd never agree to a divorce. I said, "You don't have a choice." Then he threatened to fight me for full custody. I said, "Go ahead and try. I don't think the court will side with you." Then he hit me with another deal. If I agree to care for him post-surgery, he'll sign the divorce papers, hand over the house, and give me full custody. I swear, I wanted to rip our wedding photo off the wall and smash it over his head. Instead, I said, "Put it in writing." He stormed out again, without even saying goodbye to the kids. Christmas Eve. I did my best to keep things normal. My son seemed brighter, we baked cookies together, and he even helped me clean up. He talked about how excited he was to start high school next year. If you've never parented a suicidal teen, you won't understand how huge that is. But hearing him talk about the future, like he plans on being here, that just about broke me. I almost dropped to the kitchen floor and cried with relief. We ended the night with hot chocolate and the Polar Express. It was simple, and it was perfect. Jason texted and asked if he could stop by the next day to exchange gifts. I checked with the kids. My son said it was fine as long as I didn't leave the house. I passed the message along. Jason agreed. Christmas Day. Honestly, it was a good morning. The kids surprised me with a beautiful necklace, a clear locket filled with tiny charms, a house, a car, 2 cats, and stick figure kids with their birthstones. I love it. Truly. We went to church, then dropped cookies off at the fire station and police department. Jason came by in the afternoon. It was fine. Not warm. Not hostile. Just there. I'd already bought his gift before everything blew up, so I gave it to him. He said he had something for me too, and went to grab it from his car. I told him I didn't want anything, but he insisted. Said, "Trust me, you're gonna want this." My kids looked way too excited, so I gave in. And yeah, screw him for knowing me too well, because it was the one gift I might not be able to turn down. A trip to Vegas in February. 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. He knows how much I love football. Knows my team might actually make it this year. And of course, he's going to try to go with me. Later, we talked again. I told him honestly, I'm worried about him. His mood swings are so extreme, he's scaring people, including his own children. He said he knows. Admitted he's even starting to scare himself. I asked why he refuses to let his mom help. He said he has it in his head that I'm his wife, so I should be the one taking care of him. I asked if he'd reconsider. Maybe let his parents step in. He thought about it, then said, "What if we wait the 4 months you asked for? Then, when your sister comes to stay with the kids, you come with me. And in the meantime, we do couples therapy." I just shook my head. He still doesn't get it. I reminded him of something we talked about before we got married, about our future kids, our dreams, and the lines we'd never cross. I told him. I said I could forgive almost anything, but never abuse. And never cheating. He didn't say a word. Later, he said goodnight to the kids. They asked if he could sleep over. I didn't have it in me to say no, but I told him he was staying in the guest room. Of course, that night he crept into my bedroom and tried to talk his way into my bed. Absolutely not. I asked him to leave. Then I locked the door behind him. The next day, he left for work in the morning and said casually, "I'll see you at dinner." I told him, no, last night was a one-time thing. He needs to find somewhere else to stay. I had a full day planned. First, I left a message for his hospital social worker. Then I called a divorce attorney and scheduled an appointment as soon as possible. The kids went to the neighbor's house, and I went with Alyssa to the courthouse to help her file a restraining order. She'll get a notification in the mail with her court date. I gave Rachel a call just to check in. Turns out, she and Brian are trying to work things out. She's staying with him. Honestly, best of luck to her. I hope she knows what she's doing. After that, I picked up my son for his therapy appointment. When we got there, I asked the therapist if I could have a few minutes alone with him before the session. I told him nearly everything about Jason, the cheating, the lying, the breakdowns, all of it. Then I asked the hardest question, how do I tell my kids? What's the best way to explain all this in a way that won't scar them? He told me to stick to the truth, keep it simple, age-appropriate. Don't hide what's happening, just leave out the graphic parts. Let them ask questions. Then he called my son into the room and gently asked, "Is it okay if I share some of what you've told me about your dad with your mom?" My heart dropped. My son didn't even hesitate. "I'll tell her," he said. Then he turned to me and let it all out. He told me he's overheard his dad talking to another woman multiple times. The conversations were wrong, inappropriate, and he's been purposely distracting his little sister so she wouldn't hear them. But he thinks she knows anyway, because sometimes she'll get really sad and ask if daddy's on the phone again. He looked over at the therapist, maybe for reassurance, then kept going. He said the last time they spent time with their dad, he took them to the skate park but didn't even hang out with them. Spent the whole time talking to some woman. And when my son got too close, he overheard Jason tell her that the kids were his niece and nephew. When he confronted him, Jason said he must have misheard. But I didn't, my son said. And I didn't like how he was talking to her. I thanked him for being so brave and honest. Then I stepped out and let them continue their session. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store and bought a deadbolt. So of course, later that night, Jason shows up. Tries to walk in like he still lives here, and can't. The door's locked. He loses it. He starts pounding on the door, kicking it. I told him, Loud and clear, "You're scaring the kids. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." That got him to back off. An hour later, Alyssa called me. Yep, he showed up at her place again. Begging, crying, trying to worm his way back into her life. At this point, I honestly wished she'd leave me out of it. I told her not to open the door, and if he didn't leave, she should call the cops. Then I called my security company to ask about pulling footage from our doorbell and living room cams. If I need evidence for court, I want it ready. Today, I talked to the hospital social worker. She let me know that Jason revoked my information release. So, they're not allowed to discuss his medical situation with me anymore. I told her that was fine. But I also told her I'm deeply concerned. That his moods are erratic, his behavior alarming, and I will not be his caretaker, not now, not ever. She said she'd schedule a session with him soon to check in. Later, I had a quick meeting with a lawyer. She squeezed me in during her lunch break. I'm officially filing for a restraining order. And if Jason loses control again, if he gets violent or threatening, I will call the police. I'll even ask for a psychiatric hold. Maybe they won't go through with it, but it'll be on record that I tried. After that, I took my daughter to her first therapy appointment. I explained everything to the therapist, and she said she'd be coordinating with my son's therapist to keep things aligned. They both work at the same behavioral health center, which helps. Then, I called Jason's parents. I told them everything. They said they'd been worried for a while, but assumed it was just nerves about the transplant. Now they know the truth. And they're flying to California to help. I don't know what they can do exactly, but at this point, I'm more than happy to let them deal with his mess. I've done my time. That night, I sat my kids down for the hardest conversation I've ever had. I told them, "Your dad and I don't get along anymore. We're getting a divorce." My daughter started crying almost immediately. "Is it because of the other ladies?" she asked. I nodded. "That's part of it," I said. "But also, Daddy went through something really traumatic last year, and he hasn't been the same. He needs time to heal and figure out who he wants to be." She asked if he could come back home once he's better. I said no. That chapter is closed. My son quietly said, "I don't want to live with him. I'm scared of him." My daughter nodded. "Me too. I thought it was my fault for not telling you about the ladies. That broke me." I told her it was not her fault. None of this was. Whatever goes wrong between two grown-ups is on them, not their kids. Then she asked what I did wrong. I told her the truth. I waited too long to see how much Daddy had changed. And I didn't get him help sooner. Later, my son asked if we could move back east to be closer to family. I said, "Not yet. We need to stay here for now so you can be near your dad. But we'll talk again in a few months." So here's where we stand. I'm filing for divorce and asking for full custody for now. If Jason gets into therapy and starts showing real progress, we can revisit the custody arrangement later. But until then, my priority is protecting my children. I've started looking for a smaller house. This place, it's too big now. Too heavy with memories. He can have it if he wants, or we can sell. I don't care anymore. I've gone numb. But I also found a therapist for myself, and I start next week. I need someone in my corner too. Someone who can help me unpack everything and move forward. Anyway, I think that's everything. I wasn't planning on adding this last update, but since I dragged you all into this emotional wreck of a story, even if just online, I figured I owed you the ending. Thank you for being here. For the kind words, for the tough ones, for just listening. You have no idea how much it helped.
Bye-bye.